This video, we are going to be analyzing the top 10 most clutch plays by the Mets in the regular season. So, just for disclosures, this will not include the Pete Alonso walk-off, but we are going to look at it. That walk-off, no, not walk-off, the 3-run homer. The Mets win probability before the homer, 17%. After, 80.4%. So that caused the Mets win probability to go up 63.4%. Probably going to rank in the top four. Again, the Mets were showing us some fight beforehand, as there was runners on the corners. It was a go-ahead run. So obviously the win probability couldn't be that low. And obviously you're only taking a one-run lead when the Brewers start by the bottom of the ninth. But the Mets could further add on. That's why it was 63.4%, because obviously it was still huge to go from 2 down to 1 up. Oh, and I was also at this game, the number 10. Now what they haven't showed you is top 10 clutch plays of the first half of 2024. Because it was actually a single beforehand that ranked just below it. And by the way, not every player in this list is even going to be in a Mets win. Obviously, a walk-off is. You could still have a clutch hit in a losing effort. But, like actually we saw the Brandon Nimmo hit, the double against the Astros. But we're not talking about that one. So, because you actually look at this. Because that happened right before. As you can see, 16.1% win probability to 55.8% probability when that happened. And I'm also not sure if you can hear the audio. I'll test it beforehand. But you really don't need to hear the audio for this one. And then a walk-off, 55.8% to 100%. They're saying 0.438. In reality, it's 44.2%. And in the base hit before the game was 39.7%. So, because, well, that's just how the course of events went. Because you can even see here how, according to ESPN, again, the Cardinals are at an 83.9% chance to win the game. Bader singles to tie the game, and then the Mets probability goes to 55.8%. Vientos walks it off 100%. And the logic, as to why Vientos' homer was more clutch was because, look, in the first scenario, you had 2 outs, but the Mets had a runner on third. So, all he needed was a single base hit, and you're going to tie it. To secure a win, you didn't need a homer, but you needed at least a double, possibly a triple. If you got out, that was it. And if you got a single, what's to say that the next guy isn't getting out? And then go back into the 12th, and then the Mets' probability of winning falls again. Obviously, if Bader gets out there, that's game over, and the Mets lose 2-1. So his hit seemed more clutch, but it wasn't based on win probability because of what was needed in both cases. So that, again, both two very clutch hits for the Mets to secure a victory from the jaws of defeat. You needed 2 hits. And obviously, there's a lot of questions about why the Cardinals left Liberatore in there, in the 11th inning, because that's when he had his meltdown. Yes, the Pete Alonso homer. Pete Alonso was not very clutch this year, even though he did get the huge hit in the wild card round. But before that, he was not known for performing in the clutch. This was one of the few times where he did because he hit the home run. Before that, the Tigers had a 79% chance to win the ball game. And then Pete Alonso hits the home run to tie it up at 63.3% because now the Tigers have to go the entire top of the ninth, the entire bottom of the ninth in a tie game now with no room for any error. Um, Looking at it, the Mets win probability was 63.3% after, it was only 21% before. So that would cause it to go 42.3%, which is actually less than Vientos' walk-off. So I'm a bit confused as to why they did it this way. Then, then obviously, the Beatty was walked. Beatty got the second on a sacrifice bunt, and then Tyrone Taylor hit the walk-off, and the Mets won this game for their first win of the season after losing their first five. Now this actually came in a losing effort for the Mets against the Angels. This came in a losing effort in a series Mets fans want to forget because they lost this. This is a home run to forget if you're a Mets fan because the win probability for the Mets went from um, only 37.4% beforehand to 83% after the Grand Slam. Um, so it went up 45.6%. They say 45.7%. It's just tragic when you realize what happened next as the Angels get two base runners, and then they hit a home run to go up 5-4, which winds up being the final score. So even though Martinez hits the grand slam, Brazoban, a terrible trade deadline acquisition from David Stearns, blew the game. And again, I'm one of Stearns' biggest critics. This was one of Stearns' worst moves, was acquiring Brazoban. Even though he didn't give up anything for him, he still had negative wins above replacement, and this game showed it, how bad Brazoban was. Because I'm not saying the Mets played well beforehand, but it seemed like this was going to be a clutch win that they pull out, and and they blew it. Now this was a very interesting game for the Mets. Their second walk off of the week, and and it was interesting because in this game, the Cubs at points had a 4-0 lead, and then a 5-2 lead, and over an 85% chance to win. So so now ESPN is saying 51.3% chance because that's the increasing because that's what the Cubs win chances were. This website saying only 48.7%, so there must have been a mistake there because the Mets and it makes sense in looking at perspective. The grand slam is obvious because you went from being two down to two up, but of course you had bases loaded beforehand. In this case, you had runners on first and second base, but you were down one. You were down one run. A single would tie it. A double would win it. So I'm not sure why the win probability for the Cubs was as high as it was. Probably should have been more like 48.7% before the walk off hit. But obviously, hitting a double is pretty difficult. Now, this was in one of the darkest periods for the Mets of the season. Um, this was this was an interesting series because in all six games on the Giants trip, and they won four of them, the team who the team who had the early lead blew it, and in the first two games, we saw the sky really begin to fall apart for the Mets. They were in a 5 game losing streak before this, and it looked like the Mets are going to get their sixth straight defeat, and then Bader happened. 70.6% chance to win because with one out, with one out, the Mets have loaded the bases, set 29.4% chance to win, and then it goes to 82.2% chance to win after the double. And you look at that, and then again, 52.8% win probability to increase. The Mets are saying it was only 51.7%. And the thing is that obviously, when you have a runner on third and only one out in the bottom of the ninth, it's very tough to win games. That's why the walk-off hit win probability increases was under 20%. By that point, Mets fans thought they were going to win, even though Navarez sucks. But the double was really, really critical because it tied the game and it sent two in scoring position. That's probably why they intentionally walked Beatty to set up the force out at home plate. But Navarez managed to get his first hit at Citi Field, and the Mets stopped their skid. They would have lose their next 3 games and 5 out of the next 7. So this was still in one of the darkest moments of the Mets season, but it was still a good win despite that. So in that case, it's saying 53.8% win probability increase, and ESPN was also showing 46% before. And now this is an interesting case because the Mets were on defense. The Mets were on defense when this happened, but this was a crazy game. The Mets fell behind 3-0 and had at points less than a 10% chance to win. And even when they fell behind 4-3, they their win chances were almost 10%. And then their win chances went as high as 92.5% before Reed Garrett seemingly had a meltdown. Phillies had a 53.6% chance to win. So this went up, 53.6% according to ESPN. And then 100% afterwards. And it makes sense too. The Mets were struggling before this. They had only one out and they had bases loaded and they were only up by one. A sacrifice fly ties up the game. A base hit wins it. However, Castellanos ground into a rare double play of 2-3 variety. And that is what won them the game and it gave them the victory. Usually, again, that much of an increase is on offense. But I think if you're on defense and you have bases loaded, one out, and you're down by one, your chances of winning are just under 50%. And yet the Mets came through and won it in one play. Oh God, that was clutch. I think the Mets were down to the final out too when it happened. Again, 87.6% chance to win before Lindor. No, actually wait, no. Before he hit it, they had a 24.6% afterwards, 84.9%. So again, that would go up 60.3%. They're saying 59.8% because they had gotten the lead and then they blew it, and then they got it back. They got it back, and they took the lead back with 2 outs. So a game that looked lost, the Mets managed to pull it right out of thin air to improve back to 500. And this is the one that gave the Mets increased to nearly 2% chance in the World Series probability, because this is the one that sent them to the playoffs. Looking at it from a regular perspective, it was only the third most clutch hit. This is the second game of the doubleheader that sent the Braves to the playoffs. This is the one that sent the Mets to the playoffs. Again, it's looking at the win analytics, a crazy game. This was game of the year because just because of the stakes involved. And again, the chances of the Mets winning was 16.2% beforehand, 79.7% after, and 63.5% win increase. They're saying 64.5%. Um, and it's just because you had one on, one out, and then Lindor sends it 413 feet to give the Mets the lead, which they wind up holding on to and going to the playoffs. But it wasn't the most clutch hit from a regular perspective. Because this one you could see 70% for Atlanta, 27% for the Mets, even though they're saying only 72.4%. When Nimmo walks it off with a run on second and one out, down one. And then Martinez is pretty much the same thing. And, that home run was a very similar scenario where you have a runner on second and a walk-off. Now, ESPN is saying that was a 74.8% chance. I guess it's because they thought that the Marlins reliever was better than the Braves reliever. Doesn't really make a whole lot of sense, but yeah. Or maybe because Lindor was on first and then they couldn't update the win probability afterwards. But either way, those are the most clutch hits for the Mets. Walk-offs down one.